channel, This Wednesday Knit. I'm Jessica,
And I'm Rachel.
and this is our space where we just like to talk about all the things that we've been working on, which is primarily knitting, and then today we have one sewing object to talk about.
And it is currently like 1 in the afternoon, but Missouri decided to make it very dark today. So hopefully it's cozy vibes and not too bad of lighting. We just have a lot that we want to share with you. So we're really hoping to be able to sit down and share those things today. But excellent knitting weather, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, good knitting weather, maybe not the best lighting. We'll see how it goes, but bear with us. But do you want to talk about what you're wearing?
Yes, if you've been here before, you've probably seen it because I cast this on in early September, so it's been a little bit. But I'm wearing my Billie pullover by Sari Nordlund. And I knit this in Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock worsted, and I believe their natural color or whatever their off-white cream color is. Uh, it is an all-over cable raglan design. You start at the top and then work your way down, picking up stitches for the collar. And the pattern doesn't have a huge amount of positive ease recommended, so I did size up for this pattern, although I still think it doesn't have a ton of positive ease. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a little bit, but it looks more like maybe 4 to 6. And what I've noticed about myself is I'm starting to gravitate towards more like 8 to 10. Or
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
think so
typically grab
too.
to, just so it has the like extra oversized cozy
Yeah,
fit. This looks like it fits you very well, but it doesn't look like it's like quite in that like oversized category.
yeah, it's not, I don't know, it's not oversized. And especially in the collar, it's not tight, but I feel like it looks pretty cinched into the neck. So I'm not unhappy with my choice. I think that this is a really beautiful sweater that I'm very proud of. But I would almost size up a second time if I was to do this again. So if you're interested in this pattern, maybe just a note that it really doesn't have a lot of positive ease. In fact, I had somebody last episode who commented that they knit it and it didn't fit them at all. So I was like, oh, that's so sad. But I think it's so impressive and beautiful. And it's one of those pieces that I'm like, wow, I can't believe I made that type of
Yeah, you'll
thing.
have it for a long time.
Yeah, it's still very classic, just really beautiful piece. So I'm very happy to have it off the needles.
Well,
And you are wearing,
I'm wearing the Northern Augustine's number 6 by Anne-Sophie Velling, who goes by Augustine's DK on Instagram. So this is her Christmas sweater. You can see it has little like motifs across the yoke, so it has like little candy canes and bows and trees and presents and just all sorts of little Christmassy things across it. So I really enjoyed knitting this. It was pretty quick actually because the color work doesn't take up like a huge amount of space. I mean, it's definitely like noticeable, but it's not like super long. There are some rows that require 3 colors per row, which is a little annoying. I tend to prefer color work that only has 2 colors at a time, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like crazy excessive. So that was good. And then I really like the yarn. I use Knitting for Olive Merino held together with Soft Silk Mohair, and it's just so cozy. It's one of my favorite combinations, but I do have a ton of the like contrast colors left over, so I need to figure out what I'm doing with all of those. But thankfully I didn't have too much of the like camel caramel colors that I used for the body, which reminds me of gingerbread. And in fact, I gave some of my leftovers to you, which was really nice because now I
yeah.
have that out of stash too. So I was a little lazy when knitting this up. This pattern doesn't have any short row shaping, and I thought about trying to add it to the neckline before I did the color work, but I was kind of worried that because the increases start so soon compared to where you do like the ribbing, that if I did any short row shaping up there, it would just get really complicated to make sure that the numbers worked out, or I would just have like a big chunk without any increases, and that could like kind of change the shape of things. So I really thought about after the color work section doing short rows across the back, like across the underarms kind of here
Hmm.
before you split for the sleeves. And that would have been smart, and I probably should have done that, but I didn't. I was just feeling, I don't know, when I got to that part, I was like, whatever, it's okay. And I just decided to keep going since the pattern didn't call for it and I didn't feel like figuring it out. I probably should have. It wouldn't have been like super difficult. But I don't think it needs it. It doesn't feel like I mean, it's definitely a higher collar, but it doesn't feel like it's like choking me and I'm not getting any weird like puckering like sometimes you get whenever there's not short rows. Like I feel like it still lays pretty well across here, so I'm not too worried about it. I feel like that worked out well. It does have a considerable amount of positive ease though. I do think this is more like 8 inches of positive ease compared to yours that's maybe like
I would guess this is like
5.
5.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've got a little bit of extra space. So that might help as to why it's sitting that way too, is because it's just a little oversized.
I
Yeah.
don't feel like it looks like sometimes I've seen pullovers and sweaters that don't have short rows and it looks very like,
Yeah.
restricting and not
Yeah.
comfortable and that it
This
doesn't
doesn't
look
feel
that
that
way.
way to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah. I really like it. I'm really glad that I have a little Christmas sweater. And I did finish this in time to wear to my work's Christmas party. So that was super fun. I was glad that I got to wear it and kind of show it off. Some of my coworkers know that I knit and some of them don't. So I don't know that everyone like realized, but I knew and that was the important part. So
I think it's always funny because a lot of my coworkers do know that I knit, but I don't think that they fully understand. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, is like they understand, but what's funny is that I'll wear my hand knits all the time and not get any comments. And then, especially around the season when I wear like kind of tacky Christmas sweaters, they're like, "Oh, did you make that?" I'm like, "No, I didn't." I didn't spend, 40 hours making this tacky acrylic sweater with all the love in my heart. But it's just kind of funny because, yeah, I don't think that they like know what I knit. And so they don't have a perception of like what types of things I've made.
they don't know what to like look for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny, but it's always sweet when they remember that I knit and ask those things, even if it's not something that I made. I get really like sweet.
Yeah.
I know that you have way more finished objects than I do, so this is my only other finished object. No, that's not true. I have one more, but it's tiny. This is the Monday sweater by Petiteknit. You've made this several times now.
Yeah. I've made it twice and then not to jump ahead too, but I'm making one as one of my whips.
Oh, lovely. That's so fun. Um, I feel like this would be better to share on an episode where you're not wearing that because
they're similar.
They're similar, but by comparison, that one just has more detail. But this is a very classic raglan pattern. You start at the collar and then just work raglan stitches down and work stockinette for the entire thing. One thing that I didn't realize this pattern had until working it up, even though I've seen it on you several times, is it does have a pretty extensive amount of ribbing on the sleeves and on the body. I actually ended up cropping the body a little bit, about 2 centimeters, because I was really tired of doing ribbing at that point. But it kind of makes it nice that you can
I've always
cuff
folded
it.
it.
Yeah.
Like I've cuffed mine.
That's how I plan on wearing mine too. This actually just came off the needles last night, so I haven't gotten to, or off the blocking mats. So I haven't gotten to wear it yet, but just a very classic, I think I'll get a lot of use out of it type of piece. It kind
To me, it feels like a sweatshirt.
yes,
Yeah.
it's like a sweatshirt.
It's a little more casual, I feel like, than other sweaters. And I think it's just the shaping of it and the raglan style. It just feels more like, oh, just throw it on, you know?
Yeah. I really did contemplate because I had seen you start this before I cast this on, and having the same yarn, I was so tempted to make that. And yeah, like I said, having this compared, I'm like, oh, it doesn't have as much detail, but I really think I'm gonna get a lot of use out of this.
This
Yeah.
is definitely like a November, December only sweater. I don't know that I'll get a lot of use out of this like outside of it.
Man, it's so pretty though.
But that you'll be able to wear like
all the time.
all the time. Maybe not in the
Yeah.
summer when it's like 100 degrees, but any other time you'd be able to wear that.
It was also really pleasant because I cast this on while I still had this on the needles. I was much farther along with my Billie pullover when I cast this on, but having this as kind of a little bit of a breather, and then to really dive into finishing this after finishing this one, it was nice to have both experiences because I feel like this one was very like thoughtful, kept my attention, very much a like wow piece. I'm like, I can't believe I made this type of thing, very impressive. And this one was just relaxing. Like I could pick it up and do a couple rows and then walk away and not think about it or watch TV or just, I don't know, have two different experiences of knitting it, this one versus this one.
It's nice to have a balance of
Yeah.
like things you can do when you want to distract your mind and like really focus on the project, or then things that are like mindless that you can like multitask a little bit.
Yes. And so I just felt like I had two very different experiences knitting these, but both were really nice to have. So just kind of the joy of knitting those.
Well, I'm gonna jump ahead and talk about this slip because I really don't have anything else to say about the pattern that you didn't already say. Like she said, it's my third Monday sweater. I've knit two, but the other two that I've made were both using Knitting for Olive Merino held together with the Soft Silk Mohair. And this one I'm mixing it up and I'm using two yarns from KnitPicks. One is the Aloft Silk Mohair, and then I'm also using Palette, which is like a fingering weight wool. So it is kind of creating a little bit of a marl just because the mohair and the palette are ever so slightly different colors of blue, but it's not like an extreme marl. It's pretty subtle. And I'm not sure if it's the mohair or if it's the wool or a combination of both, but this feels ever so slightly thicker than the Knitting for Olive.
I can see that.
Yeah, just barely. Like it's very, very subtle, but like it just feels a little thicker than my other two sweaters.
A little denser, maybe.
A little denser, yeah. I'll have to weigh it when it's done and see if it's actually denser. Yeah. I don't know, but it feels that way. But it's really nice. I'm excited to have another one, but in the navy color. But so far, I'm just on the body.
You've made a lot of progress, though. I feel like, had you even cast that on last time we got together?
I
don't think so.
I don't think so. My next finished object is the Laura socks by Sari Nordlund, and I used Coast to Coast classic yarn in the colorway Roobios, which is from her Fantasy Coffee Husk collection. So I'll hold it up so you can see. It's this absolutely beautiful cable pattern. It's got these little like diamonds in the middle that have seed stitch, and then all of these other like traveling cables. So I think the pattern's absolutely gorgeous. I really love how they turned out. I think they're beautiful, but I hated knitting these socks and I will never make this pattern again. It just hurt my hands, especially the leg when I was doing nothing but cabling. It just really, I don't normally get wrist pain, but with these I did, and it was really hard to just have to like start and stop, and I could really only do like 2 to 6 rows a day, which I don't know, it just felt like I was never making any progress. The first one wasn't so bad. I was able to fly through that one a little bit more, but by the second one, my hands were just over it, and I really had to like slow down on it. And I just don't enjoy that process. Like, I'm the type of person, if I'm excited about something, I want to be able to work on it. And so I just didn't enjoy having to, like, I don't know, just piecemeal it a little bit and constantly be like, where was I? And pick that up. Once I got to the foot and there was more stockinette, that was a little bit better, but the legs were just not super fun to work with. And I was trying to figure out why I struggled with these socks compared to other socks, because I've knit other cabled socks before in the past, but when going through the other socks that I've knit, I think what the difference is that previously all of the cabled socks that I've knit have been like 60 or 64 stitches on size US 2, and this was a 72 stitch sock, and I used US 1, and I think the US 1 was just a little too small for what my hands could handle. I think I can do, because I knit socks on US 1 all the time, but they're usually stockinette or ribbing, like something that's a little easier on my hands, but something about the cables and manipulating those stitches and having to keep like the tension across those really nice and even just really was hard for me for whatever reason. So I think they're beautiful. I'm glad I finished them, but I will probably not be making this pattern again, as much as I just think they're lovely. I I just did not have a good experience knitting these up, which was kind of unfortunate. But the yarn is beautiful, and I used up almost every single ounce of it. I think I had maybe 3 or 4 ounces left, but I had used a little portion of this yarn for as like a contrast color for another pair of socks. So that's kind of nice that I didn't really add anything to my stash afterwards.
They are very impressive.
They're very cute. They're just like, I just love looking at the cables. I just think they're so beautiful. It's just a shame that they were such a pain to knit up.
But now they're done, so you can celebrate that.
Now they're done. Never again.
Love it. Okay, I'm gonna share a tiny finished object, but I don't know, I just had a lot of fun with it. So I took the extra merino, which is the Knitting for Olive merino camel color, and that you had, because I didn't have a lot of leftover on mine. I don't know why that was. And then I had a bunch of leftover mohair from Knitting for Olive in the color caramel. So it's basically the same yarn that both of our previous sweaters were. And I knitted this little tiny croissant. I'll put a picture so you can see it really close too. But I just thought it was really fun. The color I thought was really what drew me to this idea. But I kept seeing the Sophie scarf. I know it gets really popular around gift knitting season. And what you can do with the Sophie scarf, which is a pattern by Petiteknit, is roll it up and it looks like a little croissant. And so I kind of took that inspiration and made my own to make a little ornament. So it's not exactly the Sophie scarf, but inspired by that idea. So what I did was I took and cast on 40 stitches, and I knit with decreases every 8th and 9th row so that it was a decrease on one side, decrease on the other side. And I basically knit a little triangle, kind of like the same shape as what I think you would get if you open up like the Pillsbury, or is that what it is? Pillsbury,
like the Pillsbury crescent rolls?
Or yes, croissant, or crescent rolls, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. And so I knit a triangle like that. And then don't judge me, I hot glued a pipe cleaner into the longest part and rolled it up like a little, crescent roll. And I hot glued the end again here. And then I hot glued a little ribbon onto it.
It's so cute.
It turned out really cute. I think that the hot glue was honestly the play though, because I don't think I could have gotten it quite as neat. I don't know if you can see it very well. But it's not like super neat, but it's not super messy either. I feel like I would have struggled to pin that down with sewing and make it look really good. And I really don't know how I would have sewed the ribbon in. So hot glue it was, and it went really fast.
It's so cute.
That is really
cute. Honestly, I think you were smart to do hot glue, because I'll talk about one of my little teeny tiny finished objects, but I decided to make the holly bow by Petiteknit using some of my leftover Knitting for Olive merino and mohair from this sweater. So I used the green contrast color to knit it, and I tried to sew it down, and you can kind of see it just looks a little sad. I think if I had hot glued it, I could have gotten it a little closer onto the like little base of the bow, and it would have looked a little better. So I think I'm gonna have to snip that actually and just try that again. Also, for some reason, the little bows are sticking a little more like outwards than I want them to. I wanted them to like hang down, and right now it feels like they're like jutting out. So overall, I think it's kind of cute, but I think you were smart to do hot glue. I think I'm gonna have to redo this one and just do that.
Yeah.
And just accept it and embrace it, and that's okay.
I mean, it's not like anybody's wearing it or anything. There's no like need for a ton of structural integrity. It just kind of stays together on its own. So I thought it was the play. And I might actually make another one because I have enough yarn that I could make a little set.
Yeah, make a little matching guide.
Yes, I've got some pink ribbon that I think would be really sweet too. So I just had a lot of fun with it. I'm going to try to keep this in Ravelry notes so that if anybody likes it and wants to make it, you can go to my Ravelry page. I'm terrible about updating Ravelry. I'm trying to be better, but I will put this on there so that that is out there in the world for anybody else that wants to make it.
Yeah. And speaking of ornaments, we've both also been making little mushroom ornaments. We don't have one with us right here, but we'll put in a little video clip of some little felted wool ornaments that we've been making with the help of today's sponsor, which is Skillshare.
For anyone who's not familiar, Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts across film, illustration, design, freelance, productivity, and more. Skillshare can help take your career, skills, hobbies, passions to the next level. We've been really enjoying the wet and needle felting wool mushrooms class by Kendra Ortner. We've been making little mushies for a tree that adds so much coziness to our holiday decor. We really appreciate anything handmade, so having these little touches in our homes feels so sweet this holiday season.
Skillshare has also announced some new and exciting improvements. They've created a new class system, including smarter class categories, 3 new class topics, which include creative careers, creative inspiration, and AI and innovation, and the ability to find classes by software and material.
New members are asked to share a little bit about their interests, and from there, Skillshare immediately creates recommendations tailored to their goals.
The first 500 people to use our link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare.
Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video and giving us so much inspiration around this holiday season.
Speaking of the holiday season, I do have one other finished object, which is kind of 4 finished objects that I wanted to talk about today too. So this is the Christmas stocking by Petiteknit, and I used Fritidsgarn by Sandnes Garn, which is like a Aran weight 100% wool yarn that they have. So I have this white one. I'm gonna have you hold some of them.
I knew it was coming.
This is for my cat Pepper, and then I have a red one for my husband, and then I have this brown one for my other cat Opie. And then the bow has fallen off the green one, so I need to fix that. But I do have this green one, which is mine. So I just think they're so cute. I think they look really good together. I love all the colors. I just think they're so fun. And I did purchase Petiteknit's leather strap that she uses. So followed the pattern to a T as she wrote it, and even purchased the hardware and everything, which was super easy to attach. I did have to stab the wool in order to get it to like go in. I think I used a size US 8 needle to like stab holes, but once I was able to create holes in the felted fabric, it was pretty easy.
I'm so impressed you made all of these. There's
really,
4 of them.
They're really easy though, because it was just stockinette. Full transparency, we did film this episode before, but ran into a ton of technical issues and we just weren't happy and able to use it. But I did have some footage from us attempting to do that, where I had some of them that were felted, or I think I had one that was felted and one that was not felted yet. So we're going to insert that here real quick. That way you can see the true size difference between when I knit them up versus when they felted.
It was pretty wild.
So I've only finished felting the brown one, but I wanted to show it because I've also finished a white one, but I haven't felted it. And I am just like obsessed with how different they look before and after felting. It's wild.
That is massive. Have you measured this?
No, but it's like if I hold it up at my shoulder, it goes down to my thigh.
Oh my gosh.
Is that not insane, the size difference? I'm obsessed.
This is really dense.
It's so dense. Actually, so a bunch of people left the most helpful comments on our last video, and I am so super appreciative of it because it really gave me the confidence that I needed to do this. In order to felt this, I ended up just running it through my washer on hot with, the first round that I did, I had like a bunch of towels, and I don't think it did, I think it was like too heavy. There were too many things in the washer, and it felted a little bit. But then I ended up taking most of those out, and I did another cycle of it with just 2 towels. And I think there was a little more room for it to kind of bounce around the washer, and that really helped. And then I thought I was going to block it by just laying it flat to dry. And after like 3 or 4 days, it still wasn't dry, especially on the inside. And I was scared it would get moldy, and so I ended up just putting it in the dryer, and like nothing bad happened, so I think it's fine. It was a little lumpy after the dryer, and so in order to get it to like be kind of flat the way that it is right now, I just took an iron and just kind of like patted it a little bit.
Okay, my intrusive thoughts. You should make a swatch so that we can try to cut it. Like I just want to see if you can cut it because it's so dense. I'm like, I feel like your scissors
I can do that.
won't even do anything. Yeah, do it.
I told myself I was gonna do a swatch first and then felt it, but then I was like, nah, I'm just curious. We're just gonna go for it.
It turned out
I ended up just
perfect.
throwing it in.
I love it.
I'm so obsessed with it. It's so fun and like it's so magical that that's what it looks like now. It's pretty fuzzy and you can see a few of the stitches here or there, but for the most part it just looks like a wool. I don't know. It just looks like a wool fabric.
I'm so impressed.
So coming back, I did have a little bit of issues felting. For some reason, the brown one was my first one and it felted so easily, did not have any issues. It was great, and I was really hopeful that the rest of them would be the same way. But unfortunately, the red one did become ever so slightly smaller. I don't know how noticeable it is, but like if you hold them up, you can kind of see where this brown one is just ever so slightly bigger, and I would say most of them are pretty equivalent to the brown one.
I feel like because the red is so bright though, it does have a little bit of like visual weight to it to where when you put them in a line, I don't see the difference. Like you putting them next to each other, yes, I see that, but when you sent me a picture of them on your mantle, I didn't notice it at all.
Yeah. It is kind of ironic that the red one's the smallest one because I considered this one like my husband's stocking, and he is the largest being in our house, so it's kind of ironic that his is the smallest. But
did you do Chiefs colors on purpose then?
Yeah, well, for his, I mean, it's red for Christmas, but I consider his because of the Chiefs. And then for me, I have a lot of like plants and things that I like to take care of, so that's why I was like, I think the green one is mine. And then the cats are brown and white because my cats are brown and white.
So cute.
They're so cute.
It's like a little family.
Yeah. And then the other issue that I ran into, I think it's most obvious on this one, is when I felted this one, I just used towels and that was perfect. It was great. Didn't have any issues. With this one, I needed to wash a bath mat because it was dirty. So I was like, oh, I'll just throw it in there and it'll work the same way as a towel. And I don't know if the bath mat just decided to like die. I've washed it a million times before and it's been okay, but for whatever reason, this time it just like disintegrated, and it disintegrated into my stocking. And so when it came out, it just had like all this fuzz on it. I didn't take a picture, but I did spend a good probably like hour and a half just depilling it. I took one of those sweater shavers. It was just a cheap like Conair one, but you know, the ones that have like little razors in it that you can depill things. I just went over it and over and over and over for a really long time trying to get everything out. So even now I'm still finding like little pieces here and there that I'm having to pull out. And this white one really got the worst of it, but I think there was a little bit of like remnants left in the washer whenever I felted the green and the red one because they kind of had the same thing and I had to depill those too. So that was a bummer, but I do think it looks okay, like all things considered.
I think they're beautiful. I see what you're talking about now that you pointed it out, but I don't think I would have realized it on my own.
Yeah. Here, I think here's like, I don't even know if you'll be able to see it on camera. You can kind of see a little bit. It's not super obvious though. Not to like be like, I did a great job, but I think I did an okay job like depilling them.
No, so much time went into those. There was a
Yeah.
lot of work involved in that.
Yeah. The other thing that was kind of funny about making these stockings, and you're making a stocking too, so I'll be curious if you're running into this too. When I Google stockings and like, or like go to Pinterest or something, I've noticed that a lot of stockings are very like nubby
I
in the
found that
foot
too.
area. Like it just looks like the foot is so short. And I think this one looks like a sock. Like I think if I took a normal sock and put it over, it looks proportional.
I agree.
So obviously this is too big for anyone to actually wear, but it does look like a foot would fit in here theoretically, whereas I found like a lot of Pinterest inspiration, it just looks like the foot is so short and awkward. And I had never paid attention to that until I knit a stocking, and now I can't unsee it. So Just kind of a funny observation. But
I'm
you're also making a
I was
stocking.
just gonna say I'm knitting stockings too. We're kind of going out of order. I feel like most of the time we follow a very like finished objects, work in progress, and today we're gonna be a little bit fluid, but that's okay. I am knitting the December stockings by Petiteknit, and I'm using a combination of Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock worsted, which is the same yarn I have here, just in a different color. And I also pulled out some mohair from stash. I hand wound them. It took a while, but Jessica has the winder and I didn't have access to it for a minute. I am done with the leg on this, and I've put in a little line of contrast yarn so that I can come back and do the heel. And now I'm on the leg or the foot, but it's just gonna kind of look like a tube until we go back and do what I think we would consider to be an afterthought heel. Is that right?
That sounds right.
I haven't read the pattern too closely, but that's what I'm thinking is going to happen here soon. And this pattern is pretty reminiscent of her new design, the Dagmar jacket or the Dagmar pullover. It's got these big diamond cables. A couple of things to point out. Petiteknit used or recommends a size US 4, and she recommends an Aran weight. I'm using a worsted and a mohair, which I think would be about equivalent to an Aran, and I'm using US size 8 needles, so I'm going up 4 needle sizes, and I still feel like my measurement is a little bit small. It's pretty close, but she's recommending that the width here should be about 7 inches and 3/4, so close to 8 inches. And I think I'm gonna get a little over 7 inches. For full transparency, I didn't swatch because I was like,
it's a stocking.
It's a stocking. Yeah, I'm not gonna wear it. So if it's a little small or a little big, it's not the end of the world. But I'm like, I've never had to go that extreme for a Petiteknit pattern as far as like where her gauge to where mine is. Normally, I can look at her patterns and just pick up a size bigger. Like if she recommends a US 5, I would go to a 6. So going from a 4 to an 8, I was like,
I've had
that's
that
a big
happen
jump.
with one other pattern. Well, not quite as dramatic, but like the Esther sweater that I knit, she recommends a US 6, and I had to jump to a US 8. But
Okay.
not quite as extreme as like
Yeah.
the US 4 to the US 8.
A US 4 sounds very tiny for an Aran weight. I feel like that would hurt my hands a little bit.
That does sound like it would hurt my hands.
So anyway, not a problem at all, just an observation. The other thing I'll point out, and maybe somebody has words of wisdom for me, is, and I think it's just on my left-leaning cables. So on some of my cables, it's twisting very nicely, and I love that. And on some, it's just coming out a little bit more flat, which has happened to me before with cables that are very, how do I say it? Like there's a lot of stitches because this is like 5 and 5. And I feel like the bigger the cables get, the more often I have that problem. But I'm just not sure why it's doing it on some and not others. Like this looks very good and this one does not. And I just don't know what to do. But it's not on this side, if you'll notice. It's only on this side.
Blocking might help a little bit.
It's just one of those like, why does it do that sometimes? I don't know. And it's only on one side because again, cable.
Yeah, the right. Wait, the left
The
leaning?
left-leaning
The
cable.
left leaning. Those ones look good.
Yeah. Wait. No, it's the left-leaning that are flat. The right-leaning are
yes,
good.
the right leaning look good.
Yes. And that's exactly why when I knit the jacket number 2 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, I talked about how I reversed the cables from what she recommended. And that's why, because I've had that problem before and I just haven't figured out a solution. But I also feel like it only happens with those wider cables. Like I did not have that issue at all with these. So I don't know, but just another little note. I think it'll go pretty quick other than that, though. I'm really enjoying the pattern. So
it's really cute.
That part is nice.
Yeah. Well, I have one other finished object to talk about, and that is my finished Olympia pullover. And this is by Claudia Quintanilla of Unit Toronto. And she kindly gifted both the yarn and the pattern. So this is like a sponsored finished object. But I'm super happy with how it turned out. I'll kind of show it up close so you can see the yarn. The yarn is from a brand, I believe it was Emilia and Philomene, which is a Canadian brand, but they have their like yarn and like their labels and things in French, which was really fun. So I feel like it was a yarn that I wouldn't have found on my own in the US. I've never seen it in stores, but now that I am like familiar with it, I'll have to start, keeping my eye out to see if we see it anywhere. But I really love the yarn. It was so soft. And this pattern is pretty fun because it looks like a regular raglan. Like from the front, it's super basic. But then in the back, it does have this keyhole detail that has a ribbon. So for the neckband, you knit this flat and then tack it down, like sew it. So that way you've got an opening here that you can thread the ribbon through. And I chose to go with this kind of navy one. My ribbon's kind of falling apart. I'll tighten that up a little bit. But I do think it's fun that I can always like switch this out if I decide I want a different color or something. It was pretty quick and easy to just thread it through. So I think it's a cute little detail.
It's so pretty.
A couple of things that I like modified or did my own thing on. When it comes to the keyhole detail, I decided to do a I-cord edge. So I think I did 3 stitches, if I remember correctly, and I just picked up a goodly amount of stitches. I think I maybe did 3 out of every 4 stitches along the edge and then made an I-cord edge for that. The pictures looks like maybe she did like a garter stitch, but I couldn't find instructions for that, and I thought the I-cord would look a little cleaner anyways. It was just a personal preference sort of thing. So that's what I decided to do. And then a couple of other just small modifications. The neckband has you start out with an even number of stitches, but in order to have a slip stitch on either side and still have it be symmetrical, I did make it an odd number, and so I had an extra stitch in the front. And so then when I got to the keyhole area down here where you increase just a couple of stitches to connect them, I went ahead and added an extra stitch here. So I have 2 extra stitches in the body than what the pattern recommends, but to me that sort of thing is not impactful. That's like a super, I don't know, non-material change, I guess. And then they did send me 4 skeins of this yarn, but I ended up needing a 5th one in order to get the sleeves long enough. But I think because I had extra yarn, I probably overcorrected a little bit and made the sleeves ever so slightly too long. But I'm not mad about it because I'd rather have my sleeves be a little long than a little short.
I would too.
I'm okay if they like bunch up a little bit. I think that's kind of fun. And then this sleeve does have a nice little detail at the top where it's got the folded cuff. So you knit the cuff twice as long as it needs to be, and then you sew it down on the inside, and it makes this like really thick, warm cuff, which is actually what the sweater that I'm currently wearing did too, which is kind of fun. I don't think I've ever done a folded cuff like that, and then I did 2 sweaters back to back that both had that detail, but I really like it. So.
I don't think I have any like that, but it's nice.
Yeah, I think it's fun. And if I remember correctly, I don't think the sleeves had any decreases. I think you just knit them straight until you get to the end here, and then you do the decreases to make like a little baby balloon sleeve. Like it's not super dramatic, but just a little bit, which is kind of cute.
Beautiful. You have a skirt that goes really well with that too.
I do. Yeah, we'll put a video if we haven't already, but I did get some fabric from Matchy Matchy Sewing Club that happened to go perfectly with this sweater, which I thought was fun. I ordered that on my own. It just was a pure coincidence that those seemed to work together really well.
I've got one more work in progress, so I'll share that.
Okay.
Although I'm not sure where I'm going with it. We'll see. This is the Cove sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl, and I'm knitting it with 2 strands of Knitting for Olive Merino in the color navy and 1 strand of the Soft Silk Mohair in the same color. It's on US size 8 needles, and I think it's got around an 18 stitch gauge, so it's theoretically going to be a pretty fast knit. But if you watched our winter planning video, I talked about how there was this store-bought sweater from a brand called Lisa Says Ga. And the store-bought sweater has these two swans facing each other that are just so cute. And I was like, that would be a really cute Christmas sweater this year. And I was like, I can make that, obviously. Which I think I do have in my capabilities, but I've kind of learned a little bit. I went to make the swans and I was going to knit it with intarsia. Am I saying that right? Intarsia.
That's how I say it.
Okay. I don't use that technique a lot. Like that's probably the knitting technique I'm least comfortable with. And so that was, of course, a little bit of a, I don't know, a
Learning
factor.
curve.
Yes, a learning curve. And what I hadn't really thought about was that even though it looks simple because there's only really two colors, I was going to duplicate stitch the little beak color. And so it was really theoretically just like blue and white, which sounds simple. But I got to a part in the pattern where even though it was just two colors, there were a lot of breaks. And so it was like blue for a little bit, and then do the little swan neck, and then do blue, and then do the little swan head, and then blue again, and then repeat that. And so there were 7 colors being worked. And I just was having a hard time with like yarn management and keeping the little yarn bobbins sorted. And I really think what I need to do is figure out how to do intarsia and color work. That has to be possible, right?
I would think so. That would make sense to me.
I think that's what I would need to
I
do,
don't think
but
I've ever done it, but I think you could.
yeah, it has to be a thing. And I wish that I'd sat down and thought about it more because in my mind it was like 2 colors, easy, and then going to do it was actually very difficult, and it was coming out looking very handmade. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but in this case it just wasn't what I was going for. And so I ended up ripping it back. I think the swans were a little small anyway. Like I would want to expand the chart a little bit. So like that, I was second guessing the size. I was not loving the quality of my work. And I was just like, no. So I ripped the swans out and it's back to here. And so I'm debating if I'm going to continue it and redo the swans or if I'm going to just make a nice classic navy sweater. The other factor, and it's not the end of the world, but it's only like 10 days till Christmas at this point, and I'm knitting stockings. And I really would like to finish the stockings, which I only have one and like a half of one. And I want to do at least 2. So I'm like, there's no way I'm going to finish this before Christmas anyway.
Okay, but I get where you're coming from with like swans or like the 7 swans of swimming. 7 swans of
Yes.
swimming. I can't even say it. Like I get why in your mind swans are related to Christmas, but I also don't think that they're like explicitly Christmas. Like I think you could wear this in
Yeah.
March or April and no one's gonna be like, wow, that's a Christmas sweater. Like no one's gonna think that. So I don't think
Yeah.
I think if you don't want to add them because you think you'd like the solid better, that's one thing, but I wouldn't not do the swans just because you won't get it done in December,
Yeah. I agree.
if that makes sense.
But I don't think that I would be mad at having a just plain navy sweater in my wardrobe. I think I would still get a lot of use out of it. So right now it's really just on a hiatus. I just put it to the side and I'm gonna think about it a little bit. I'm gonna enjoy the stockings before Christmas, and then once I'm done with that, maybe I'll revisit this. I just don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out color work and intarsia at this intarsia. I always second guess how I say it. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do both of those at the same time, I think, if I want to make it work, which I don't know.
I think that's doable.
We'll find out.
I think you could.
I won't be mad if it just stays plain. It's gonna be okay either way.
I think you'd have to be sure that you're knitting back and forth flat.
Yes.
If you do the stranded color work.
Yeah, so this construction is a drop shoulder where you knit the back, pick up along the shoulders. I'm probably not showing that super well. And then pick up for the front. I went ahead and did the collar just so that I could tell what that was looking like. And then once you've knit enough length on both sides, you would connect for the armholes and then knit the body in the round. And I think if I was to continue with the swans, I would probably just knit the front and back panels separately and then sew them up on the side. I think that would give me the cleanest look while making the swans possible, which is another factor. It would be easier to just stick with a plain pattern and go in the round. I don't know. We'll see. It's just on pause right now.
Yeah. That's okay. It can hibernate for a little bit.
Yes, not too long, but for a little bit.
Yeah. My other whip that I'm working on is the Tau Sweater by Hive Knits. So this is a test knit for her new design. And I'm using Barocco's Ultra Alpaca in the colorway Potting Soil, which is just this really cute dark brown. I'm really happy with how the color is turning out. And it is a super textury knit. It uses a 6-row stitch repeat that's primarily using the purl bumps on the right side and then ribbing, like 1x1 ribbing. So I think it's really cute. I'm really happy with how it's turning out. I love a texture knit because it's like super popcorny. So I feel like, or
potato chippy.
Potato chippy, yes. It's like every row you're doing something different, and that makes it go really fast, or at least it feels like it is. I think I'm on day 4 or 5 of working on this, and I've already finished the yoke and have done, maybe like an inch or 2 of the body.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot done.
Yeah.
It looks a little small.
I've thought about that because it does look a little small to me too. I'm knitting the second size, which is supposed to be 38 inches when it's done. And the thing that's giving me hope is that my swatch did grow quite a bit. Like this was, I should have measured before, after, I know, to know for sure, but the swatch was correct. So like math-wise, I checked the math. I should be actually maybe like ever so slightly bigger than 38 inches. So I think it's okay. I'm just kind of trusting the process, and I'm hoping that like my swatch, when I block the sweater, it'll just bloom and open up a little bit more and grow. So I think it'll be okay, but it does look a little small right now.
Do you have trouble figuring out what the right and the wrong sides are?
Yeah. It definitely would be a lot easier on like a lighter color. I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, but that is the right side. And then this is the wrong side. So you can see it's pretty similar actually. It's kind of hard to tell. And in fact, in the chat, it was kind of funny. A few people were putting pictures of their swatches, and the designer was like, hey, just FYI, that's the wrong side, or that's the right side. And I did the same thing. When this was wet and the yarn was a lot darker, I had a really hard time telling which was the right side and which was the wrong side. And so I actually blocked it with the right side facing down, which I don't normally do. Normally I try to have the right side facing up so I can see what it looks like as it dries. But with this one, as it dried, I realized I had blocked it upside down. So I don't think it makes a difference in the final swatch. Like I can't imagine that would do anything. It's just like something that I try to be cognizant of. But I did actually like dry this with the right side down and the wrong side facing up.
It's a beautiful texture, though. I just want to touch it.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think I've been liking texture on dark yarns recently. Like something about the way, I don't know, it's subtle but fun.
The light can kind of catch it and make it, yeah, it's subtle, but it's there. So yeah, I like it too. It's nice.
Yeah. It is kind of funny too. I feel like when I'm test knitting, I'm either like the first person or I'm the last person. And I feel like with this one, everyone's been so fast. Like everyone is just zooming through, and so everyone's already caught like all the mistakes. Like I haven't found anything so far in the pattern. Like I've just been reading it straight through and have not had a single problem. But I think that's kind of good from like a designer standpoint, because then she knows like, okay, as I'm fixing things, someone else is going along and like making sure that it's right and they're not running into issues. But I do kind of feel like as a tester, I'm always like, oh, I should find something, and I haven't. I'm not finding anything, so we'll see if that continues to be the case, but hopefully she's okay with that. And then the other thing, I have not actually talked to the designer about this, but the bottom does have a split hem, which I think is so cute, but I've personally found that I don't necessarily love split hems because I try to tuck everything into my like high-waisted pants.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Sometimes when it's a split hem, it's kind of hard to do that and have it like lay nice and neat. So I need to reach out and ask her if she'd be okay if I omit the split hem detail and just do like a regular in the round hem for the bottom. But I feel like most designers are pretty chill about that sort of thing in a test knit because they do want to see, once they put it out there into the world, like people are going to do whatever they want anyways. So you might as well kind of see what happens when people do that.
And at the end of the day, it's also something that you are going to have, so you want to love it too. I mean,
yeah,
if it was changing the integrity of the design, that would be one thing, but I feel like people have preferences.
Yeah, and that's purely just a personal preference. If I cropped it, I would probably be okay knitting it more with the split hem because then it would like show the side details, but I think I do want to make it full length and intend to like tuck it into pants. And I think just the regular like in the round hem would be a little better for that. If she like really cares, it would not be a big deal for me to just like knit a split hem and then later when the test is over go back and fix that. But if I can't avoid that, probably would like to do that. But that's my last knitting work in progress for today.
I don't have any acquisitions for this time.
Yeah, I don't either.
Nice. We do have a sewing project though, and it's the same one, so that's kind of nice. We'll talk about it together a little bit.
Yeah. So we both sewed the Juniper Dress by Tiana Herring, and I believe we used canvas from Blackbird Fabrics. And we kind of both worked on it together over like the Thanksgiving holiday in the US, which was the end of November. So
you were a little bit ahead of me, and you were able to kind of tell me like, oh, shorten the elastic a little bit and just little things like that. I remember calling you for the collar because I was like, how does this work? But actually it was very easy.
Yeah, it was super easy. I think you were overthinking it because I can't remember. I think this is the first time I've ever made a collar or like sewed a collar. And so I thought it was going to be really complicated, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Easy.
I think that I was overthinking it because I was struggling with wrong side versus right side. What I had in my mind was a little bit different. And so once I got over that, I was like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hardest part was actually just getting the elastic because it was a very short amount of elastic in a very long part.
Yeah.
Which conceptually...
And it was like a thicker fabric, so that was kind of harder to thread it through.
Conceptually, it was easy, but then going to do it, I was like, oh, wait. But other than that, like the instructions were beautiful. It was pretty quick. I feel like we both finished it really fast.
It was definitely beginner friendly too.
Yeah.
Like the instructions really held your hand, which I really appreciate as like I consider myself like an adventurous beginner sewer still. So I like when patterns do that. It's probably annoying to people who like
know what they're doing,
been sewing for decades and know what they're doing. But for me, I was like, oh, this is great because it like was very explicit and had lots of pictures and was just super easy to follow.
And she even had little like inspirational, like you're halfway there, you got this, and it was very sweet. What was funny about that pattern was that around the same time that we made that, we also put out our winter planning video. And I had talked about how I wanted to make a brown dress because I bought a whole bunch of fabric and I had intentions of making a brown dress out of it. Still do. And then we posted that one on Instagram and people were like, oh, you already made your brown dress. But what I didn't share was that I bought 2 things of fabric with brown fabric.
I think one of them was in the mail, or like maybe we ordered it like right after we filmed that. I can't remember,
yeah.
But we didn't have it at the time.
So the idea was nice. People were like, oh my gosh, you already did your goal. I have not done that yet. We have 2 different brown fabrics for 2 different brown dresses maybe, or maybe we'll change it and see what it comes to. But I did not meet that goal. So we just happen to have another brown dress, but that's okay. That's okay. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It was cool too. This pattern I think was designed after the Noble dress, or maybe it's called the Utility Dress by the brand Noble. I think their handle on Instagram is Shop Noble, and the designer reached out to them and asked if they were going to, make that dress more size inclusive, if they were going to increase their size range, especially on like the plus size. And I don't remember what their response was, but I think it was going to be either they weren't planning on doing it or it was going to be like a long enough lead that the designer felt comfortable like duping it and making her own pattern. And as someone who would rather just make one by hand, I appreciate that she did that because even if, I mean, I think the version on Noble does come in our size range, but it's just more fun to make it yourself and have your own version of it. So I'm glad that she did that.
And I also thought we would mention that this is the first pattern I've seen where the designer decided to put the size range in reverse from what you normally see in a pattern. So typically what I've always seen in both knitting and sewing is that size ranges go from smallest to largest. And in this pattern, it goes from largest to smallest, which was nice because there's no reason for why it should be one way or the other. And it was just kind of fun to have a different experience. Uh, just the way that you read the pattern and look at it. I don't know. I thought it was fun.
Yeah. I don't think it affected any of the instructions. I do think that would be hard for knitting because I think once you've knit so many patterns, you kind of remember like, oh, I'm making like,
Oh, yeah,
like
that's
for
true.
us, it's usually the first, second, sometimes third size, like depending on what the pattern is. So you kind of get used to like, oh, I'm looking at the middle or like the beginning of the size chart or the middle of it or the, I feel
Hmm.
like at knitting, you kind of get into a rhythm of like where in the lineup of sizes you're looking. But for sewing, like
You're
it
just
did,
cutting it
yeah,
out.
you're just cutting it out. So like it didn't matter. It was great.
Yeah, it was just kind of fun.
Yeah.
Small detail. I think that's all we have to share today. Is that right?
Yeah. I don't have any acquisitions or anything else new, but I feel like this was still a lot of progress since our last one. So I appreciate everyone joining us, especially if you made it this far.
And if you've knit anything that we've talked about or have plans to, please let us know. If you were knitting during this, we always love to hear what you were working on, and we just really appreciate you joining us today.